Now, we have defined the variable on the x-axis for the market of aggregate market. The variable on the x-axis is real GDP, that is the quantity of that good. Now the variable on the y-axis is the price of that good, which we call the price level. In chapter 4, we use the GDP deflator to measure the price level. In chapter 5, the first part of chapter 5, we use the CPI to measure the price level in the aggregate market. Next, we want to start to draw the demand curve, the aggregate demand curve. And remember how we draw a demand curve in chapter 3? First, we pick a price. We pick a price and then find a quantity demanded. Find a quantity demanded to get the first dot. We are going to use the whole chapter 11 to find this dot. And then we pick another price. And then find another quantity demanded. And then we connect the dots. Then we get the aggregate demand curve. We are going to do that in chapter 10. Remember, before we draw a demand curve, we have to know who the demanders are. Why? Because any demand curve describes the behaviors of the demanders. You have to draw the demand curve based on the demander's behavior. If you want to change the aggregate demand curve, if you want to change a demand curve, then you have to change the demander's behavior. Only if the demander's behavior changes, then the demand curve will change. Now, who are the demanders in the aggregate market? The answer is everybody is a demander. Remember, in the economy, in the whole economy, everybody is a demander and everybody is a supplier. So how can we distinguish demanders and suppliers in the aggregate market? The answer is we use people's behaviors to distinguish demanders and behaviors and suppliers. Say for example, I'm teaching, I'm a supplier of the education, but I'm buying things in Myers, therefore I'm a demander. So who are the demanders? Anybody who buy things. Anybody who buy things. And when you buy things, you have to pay. Therefore, anybody who has expenditures is a demander in the aggregate market. Therefore, aggregate demand curve must be derived from the aggregate expenditure, because that's the definition of demanders. Demanders must have expenditure. So let's talk about the aggregate expenditure function. That is chapter 11. So again, at a specific price. So for the whole chapter, we are not going to talk about price because we are going to fix a price. Remember? We fix a price and then try to find the quantity demanded. So throughout chapter 11, we are going to talk about this price only. Therefore, we are not going to talk about any price. And because the price is not changed, real GDP, real aggregate expenditure, is equal to the nominal GDP, nominal aggregate expenditure. Real GDP is equal to nominal GDP. Real aggregate expenditure is equal to nominal aggregate expenditure. Real is always equal to nominal if we fix the price level. Okay, then what is aggregate expenditure? Remember the expenditure approach? Aggregate expenditure is households expenditure, consumption, plus firms expenditure, investment, plus government expenditure, plus foreign sectors expenditure, that is export minus import. Again, since price is fixed, everything is in real term. So throughout this chapter, we're going to ignore this word real. Expenditure is a plan. Why is it a plan? Say for example, after you graduate, what kind of car are you going to buy? The answer is, it depends. If you get a $60,000 job, then you may buy a Chevy. But if your new job pays you $100,000, then you may want to buy a Toyota. If you get a $200,000 job a year, then you will buy a Mercedes. So your buying car plan depends on your income. If you have more money, you buy a better car. Therefore, your expenditure depends on your income. However, remember in chapter 4, we said that in the whole economy, total production should be equal to total expenditure, which should be equal to total income. Remember that? Production is equal to expenditure, which is equal to income for the whole economy. So what we are saying here is aggregate expenditure depends on income, and in equilibrium, expenditure must be equal to income. Therefore, we should be able to find an equilibrium expenditure income, where your expenditure plan depends on this income, and this income is exactly equal to your expenditure. So how to find the equilibrium income expenditure? That's what we are going to do in this chapter. Expenditure is a plan. Okay? And aggregate expenditure is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. And your plan depends on your income. Now, let's do one by one. First, let's look at your consumption. So your planned consumption depends on your income. Planned consumption depends on income. It's easier to understand. Which car you're going to buy depends on how much money you're going to make. So let's do one by one. Let's talk about consumption first. Your planned consumption is a function. It's a function of what? Income. So consumption function is the relationship between planned consumption expenditure and the disposable income. That is, your consumption depends on your disposable income. What is disposable income? Your salary is, say, $100 per week. But did you get paid $100 exactly? The answer is no. You may just get $80. Where's the other $20 go? Where does the other $20 go? It goes to the government. You pay tax. Therefore, your disposable income is only $80 even though your income is $100. So disposable income is income minus tax. So consumption is a function of disposable income. In functional form, we write it this way. Alright? Now, I have to do some review of your middle school algebra. Remember, in your middle school algebra, you learned this. Y is a function of x. Then how can you draw y equal to a plus bx? Suppose that a is positive and b is positive. How do you draw this equation on this diagram? The answer is, this is a line. You need two dots to draw a line. So which two are the easiest one to get? The answer is, first, set x equal to 0. When x is equal to 0, then how much is y? When x is equal to 0, y is equal to a. So you got the first dot, x equal to 0, y equal to a. Now, how do you get the second dot? There are many ways to get the second dot. Let's try this. So when x increases by 1, now x is 1. Then y is equal to what? When x is equal to 1, y is equal to a plus b. So you got a second dot, which is 1a plus b. So you have here a plus b, that is, this is b. Then you have two dots, you can get the line. And the function of this line is y equal to a plus bx. The second step, you increased x by 1. Therefore, this is 1. And how much does y increase? The answer is y increases by b. Right? Okay. Then, what is the y-intercept on this graph? The answer is a. And remember, what is the slope? The slope is rise over run. How much is the rise? B. How much is the run? 1. Therefore, the slope is exactly b. That's the review of your middle school algebra. One more thing. What does the 45-degree line mean? If you draw a 45-degree line, what does this line mean? What is the equation for this line? The answer is, if you have a 45-degree line, you have a right triangle here, you have a square here. That is, this must be equal to this. This must be equal to this. That is, on any point, at any point on the 45-degree line, y is always equal to x. That is, the function of the 45-degree line is y equal to x. So if the function is y equal to x, then what is the slope of this line? Remember, when y is equal to a plus bx, what is the slope? B. So y equal to x is equivalent to y equal to 0 plus 1x. Therefore, the slope of the 45-degree line is 1. With this understanding, then if we write consumption function as C equal to A plus B times disposable income, then how do you draw the consumption function? Consumption function says consumption is a function of disposable income. So when C is A plus B times YD, the intercept is A. And the slope is B. Therefore, this function is C equal to A plus B times YD. We have a special name for this A, that is the y-intercept. Its name is called autonomous consumption. Why is it called autonomous? Because A is the consumption level when you don't have any disposable income. Therefore, A does not depend on income. That is why it is called the autonomous consumption. Consumption depends on income, but this part of the consumption doesn't depend on income. It is autonomous. We also call this the surviving level of consumption. Why? Because even if you don't have any disposable income, you still have to eat to survive. So this autonomous consumption is also called the surviving level of consumption. Okay, consumption is equal to A plus B times YD. A is called autonomous consumption. The rest, B times YD, is called induced consumption. Why? Because this part of consumption is induced by disposable income. So this part of the consumption is part of the consumption that depends on income, which we call induced consumption. Induced by income. And what is B again? In algebra, again, C equal to A plus BYD. B is the slope of the consumption function. B is the slope of the consumption function. The slope of the consumption function has another special name, which is called marginal propensity to consume. Marginal propensity to consume, MPC. Okay, what is MPC, marginal propensity to consume? From those words, marginal, remember you learn marginal in your microeconomics. Marginal is when you increase something by 1 unit. So when you increase income by 1 unit, because consumption depends on income. If you increase income by $1, then what do you intend propensity? What's your propensity? What do you intend to do with this $1 in consumption? That is, if I give you $1 extra, you're going to spend 60 cents in consumption. Then your marginal propensity to consume is 0.6. What do you do with the other 40 cents? You save it. Therefore, it is called marginal propensity to save. Your marginal propensity to save is 0.4. So again, marginal propensity to consume is the fraction of a change in disposable income that is spent on consumption. Therefore, marginal propensity to consume is if I give you more, the change in disposable income. How much of this extra disposable income you are going to use in consumption? Say for example, if I give you extra $1, you spend 60 cents in consumption, then your MPC is 0.6 divided by 1, which is 0.6. If your disposable income increases by $10 and your consumption increases by $6, that is, I give you $10, you spend $6, you save the other $4. Then what is your marginal propensity to consume? The answer is 0.6. Let me ask you a question. Which country has a higher marginal propensity to consume? Japan or the United States? The answer is the United States. Because Japanese save more than we do. When we have extra income, we spend more. So the United States has a higher marginal propensity to consume than Japan. If you look at the graph of the consumption function, change in C divided by change in YD. YD is the variable on the x-axis. C is the variable on the YD is the variable on the x-axis. C is the variable on the y-axis. Change in C divided by change in YD is exactly the rise over run. That is, it is exactly the slope of the consumption function. That is why we say the slope of the consumption function has another name that is called marginal propensity to consume, MPC. So marginal propensity to consume, MPC, is change in consumption divided by change in disposable income. It is the fraction of a change in disposable income spent on consumption. It is the slope of the consumption function. And this MPC must be between 0 and 1. Why? If I give you $1 extra, you cannot spend more than this $1. and you spend a positive number of this dollar, a few cents. Therefore, the slope of the consumption function, or the marginal propensity to consume, must be between 0 and 1. Now this is a table and a chart in the textbook. Say for example, when your disposable income is 0, you plan to consume 1.5. If your disposable income is 2, you plan to consume 3. If your disposable income is 4, you plan to consume 4.5. Therefore, you can draw your consumption function. So what does your consumption function look like according to this? C is A plus B y D, right? What is A? A is the y-intercept. How much is the y-intercept? 1.5. That is, when your disposable income is 0, your surviving level of consumption, your autonomous consumption is 1.5. Plus the slope times disposable income. What is the slope? The slope is marginal propensity to consume. So when your income increases by 2, your consumption increases by 1.5. Therefore, when your income increases by 1, your consumption increases by 0.75. That is, your marginal propensity to consume is 0.75, which is exactly the slope of your consumption function. Or, how do you calculate the slope? Rise over runs. Rise is 1.5. Run is 2. Rise over run. Either way. Now, in the textbook, you also draw a 45-degree line. What does 45-degree line mean? Y equal to x. Therefore, say for example, look at this point. This point this is equal to 10, therefore this is equal to 10. But what is your consumption? Your consumption is 9. So when your income is 10, your consumption is 9. Therefore, you save $1. So in the consumption function, any portion that is lower than the 45-degree line, you save because your income is bigger than your consumption. How about this one? This point? This point is 2, 2. Where is your consumption function? Right here. So that means when your income is 2, your consumption is 3. You consume more than your income. That is, this portion of the consumption function is above the 45-degree line. So you consume more than your income. Therefore, you did savings. That is, you borrow. Now we finished the first component, consumption, of the aggregate expenditure. All right. Next, let's talk about another component, imports, because import also depends on income. If you have more money, you are going to buy more Imperial One stuff, right? Your income is higher, you're going to buy more imports. Therefore, import is also a function of your disposable income. Then what is M? Little m here. Little m is if I give you $1 extra of disposable income, how much of this $1 extra you're going to spend on import? Does that sound familiar? That is the marginal propensity now is to import. If I give you $1 extra, how much of this $1 you intend to spend on import? Therefore, this is called marginal propensity to import. Now, to make our life easier, and it is not too unreasonable, let's assume that the other three components, investment, government expenditure, and export, are all autonomous. That is, they don't depend on income. They don't depend on income. Say, for example, our export doesn't depend on our income. It depends on foreigners' income. Okay? Also, to make our life easier, let's ignore tax so that disposable income is equal to income, just to make our analysis easier. Then we are ready to draw the aggregate expenditure function. That is, we want to show our aggregate expenditure plan or aggregate expenditure schedule. What plan? What plan? Your total expenditure depends on your income, so that's your plan. When you have higher income, you have higher expenditure. When you have lower income, you spend less. That is your expenditure plan. So aggregate expenditure is a plan which depends on the aggregate income. This is what we want to do. We want to draw an aggregate expenditure function which is a function of the aggregate income in the economy. And then in equilibrium, they should be equal. So let me give you a preview. Say, for example, your aggregate expenditure function is right here. When is x equal to y? 45-degree line. Therefore, your equilibrium will be here because this is one of the points on your plan and income equal to expenditure. That's what we want to get at the end. Now, let's go through it. This is a table on your textbook. Let's go through this table. What does this table say? What does this table say? It says when income is equal to 0 in this economy, when the real GDP income is equal to 0. In this economy, consumption is 0, investment is 2, government expenditure is 2.5, export is 2, import is 0. When this economy has real GDP income equal to 5, consumption increases from 0 to 3.5. Investment doesn't change. Remember, investment, government expenditure, export do not depend on income. Therefore, no matter what income is, these are fixed numbers. The two components that depends on income is consumption and imports. When income increases, consumption increases. Import increases. When income increases, consumption increases, import increases. Alright, what is this column? This is the aggregate planned expenditure. What is aggregate expenditure? Aggregate expenditure is consumption expenditure plus investment, firm's expenditure, plus government expenditure, plus export minus import. Therefore, when income is 0, what is the aggregate planned expenditure? It is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. 0 plus 2 plus 2.5 plus 2 minus 0, which is 6.5. When your income is 5, you plan to consume, the economy plan to consume 3.5. The economy plan to invest 2.0. The economy plan on government expenditure 2.5. The economy plan to have export 2.0. The economy plans to import 1. Therefore, the economy plans to have total expenditure 3.5 plus 2 plus 2.5 plus 2 minus 1 when it has income 5. Therefore, 3.5 plus 2.5, 5.5 plus 2.5, 8 plus 2, 10 minus 1, 9. That's how we get this column. Okay, same table. What kind of question can I ask from this table? Or what kind of information you can get from this table? First, what is the autonomous consumption? Answer? Remember, what is the autonomous consumption? Autonomous consumption is the consumption level when income is equal to 0. Therefore, autonomous consumption is 0. Second question. What is the marginal propensity to consume of this economy? Answer? The answer is when the income increases by 5, consumption increases by 3.5. So when income increases by 5, consumption increases by 3.5. That is, if I give you extra $5, you are going to spend $3.5 and save the other 1.5. Then if I give you $1 extra, you are going to spend 70 cents. Therefore, the marginal propensity to consume is 0.7. Let's double check it. When your income increases by 1, your consumption increases by 0.7. So your marginal propensity to consume is 0.7. The third question. What is the slope of the consumption function? Answer? 0.7, because it is the marginal propensity to consume. What is the intercept, y-intercept of the consumption function? The answer is 0. That is the autonomous consumption. Okay, the next question. What is the autonomous import? The answer is when income is equal to 0, import is equal to 0. So the autonomous import is 0. What is the slope of the import function? The answer is when income increases by 1, import increases by 0.2. Therefore, the slope of the import function is 0.2. What is the marginal propensity to import? The answer is, it is the slope of the import function. The next question. What is the autonomous expenditure? What is the autonomous expenditure? Again, what is the definition of autonomous? The definition of autonomous is when income equal to 0. So autonomous expenditure is the planned expenditure when you don't have any income. That is, your autonomous expenditure is 6.5. The next question. Then what is the slope of your aggregate expenditure function? What is the slope of your aggregate expenditure function? Aggregate expenditure function is a function of income. So the slope of the aggregate expenditure function is when your income increases by 1, your expenditure increases by 0.5. Therefore, the slope of your aggregate expenditure function is 0.5. Now, one thing to keep in mind is which of these components, C, I, G, X, M, have a slope? The answer is consumption and imports, right? The other three does not have a slope. The slope is 0 because it's constant. The slope of consumption function is 0.7. The slope of the import function is 0.2. And all the slope of the expenditure function are from these two components, not from these three. And remember, aggregate expenditure is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Therefore, the slope of the aggregate expenditure function should be equal to the slope of the consumption function minus the slope of the import function, which is exactly 0.5. Because all the slope, all the dependencies on income of the aggregate expenditure function is from C, consumption, and import. Okay, you can also transform this table into a graph. How can we do that? Well, it's easier to start with the fixed part. First, let's draw the investment function. Investment is equal to 2 no matter what income is. Therefore, on the graph, investment is a flat line at 2. Now, government expenditure function is also a fixed number, 2.5. Therefore, I2 plus G 2.5 is a flat line again, it's 4.5. The third part, export, which is equal to 2, no matter what income is. Therefore, I2 plus G 2.5 plus X 2 is also a flat line, which is 6.5. Now, I want to add consumption, I plus G plus X. Now I want to add consumption. Okay? So when income is 0, I add 0. When income is 5, I add 3.5. So I add 3.5. When income is 11, I add 7.7. Sorry, 3.5 is right here. I add 7.7. So when I add consumption to I plus G plus X, now I add a line with a slope. Now I want to subtract M from this. Then I tilt this line down. And that's exactly our aggregate expenditure function. That is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. You can map the last column the aggregate expenditure function. So this is point A, this is point B, this is point C, D, E, F. So when you draw the aggregate expenditure function from this table, this is exactly what you get. Let me do it again. First, you plot I, add G on top of Y, add X on top of Y, and then add C on top of Y, and then subtract M. This is what the aggregate expenditure function look like. Because I is assumed to be autonomous, G is autonomous, X is autonomous, they don't depend on income. Now, autonomous consumption also doesn't depend on income. Autonomous import also doesn't depend on income. Therefore, autonomous C plus IGX minus autonomous M is called autonomous expenditure. Now, what is induced expenditure? Remember, total expenditure. Part of the aggregate expenditure is the autonomous expenditure. Which doesn't depend on income. For the rest, it depends on income, which we called induced expenditure. Because this part you depend on income. It's the slope times income. Right? Say for example, when income is 14 in our example. Total expenditure is 13.5. How much is the autonomous expenditure? Remember I asked this question a few minutes ago, which is when income is equal to 0, autonomous expenditure is 2 plus 2.5 plus 2 minus 0, 6.5, right? Sorry, autonomous expenditure, 6.5. Then what is the induced expenditure? 13.5 is 6.5 plus 7. Why? Because the induced part is here. You have this 9.8 consumption because your income is 14. You have this 2.8 imports because you have income 14. So C minus M is equal to 7. This part is the induced expenditure.